Okay, can I split this into immutable and mutable parts? So, as usual, just compile. Let's do that and that. Mutable, and this one doesn't. This one goes here, and that one goes here. So probably mutable sounds, and it has mutable sounds, and the mutable one. Something like that. Totally sucks, doesn't it? Probably like that. And of course, like that. So when you're knitting, probably guessing constants. Playing probably has played probably like that. Guessing. Okay, enough. So a bit further along, sorry about that. And I'm eating at the same time, so sorry about that too. But what I realized was I wanted to look at the implementation to see specifically what the play and loop uh, functions actually needed to do. And yeah, you can just comment out everything, boilerplate stuff like constructors, whatever. And of course, because it's warning level 4 and warning says errors, I have to remove all the unreferenced functions. And I'm compiling too fast, but anyway, implementation works. So now to fix the interfaces and the calls. Right? So this wants the immutable and the right. So the first one is immutable, and yeah, that gets rid of the horrible cast, which we needed because conceptually we were mutating something that was supposed to be mutable. Now that's the point of the refactoring split. So the mutable version of the sounds will be in the view control immutable thing, the PC mutable up here. So we're just going to say that those are there. And it will say, no, they're not. So can we get there? And we'll just say sounds. And now that, yeah, everything just works. So all it calls for like that. Might not need those, but we'll see. Sounds. So it could be argued that we don't need to pass all of that shit, all of the mutable, because this function previously didn't depend on all of mutable, and we don't need all of mutable, we just need the sounds. But in the interest of compacting stuff, potentially I could see this stuff getting inlined in this structure. But that's for later. We'll see. Super contentious, I think. People will find that. The same goes for this, that sounds could be inlined in assets, which I would really like, I think. Contentious again, but that should be shown. It shall be shown, so it will be known. Mu. So what is this all about? It's basically, first of all, splitting immutable stuff, aka assets, from mutable state that the view controller system needs. And the main reason for that is it's separation of concerns. It's really the case that, in my experience, that once you load your assets, there are a lot of stuff that's like that. You load assets like waveforms, sound files, textures, meshes, bitmaps, things like that, that once they're loaded and in memory, they are immutable. So those go in assets. And that really allows you to minimize the surface area of the moving parts of the mutable state in any part of the program. In this case, view controller aspect, deep subject, my interpretation of model view controller. Yeah, so there's all the call sites now that play sounds and loop sounds. They're getting touched now. Doesn't know what is this. It needs the immutable ones, so okay, we'll call it const vc sounds tm sounds. Yep. M. Has played a, and that one needs the mutable version. So yeah, okay. It's going to be mu. Now in this case, it's constant because it's a read only. Sound color. And that one needs smooth sounds as well. Now we're down to link ROMs as they're called. Sound init is missing. Sound init. I'm going to assume that it needs both of them. We need the engine, immutable post creation, immutable post creation stuff. And interesting. So the init only needs to init the immutable stuff. Init. Okay, so that's asset loading. Yeah. So that's still clean. And now it's the constructor destructor has played a. Let's look at that. No one needs. So the reason to do that is to get the call size right. Because since we're not object oriented, we don't get that. Like you write a function implementation, like, oh, this is not a member of class. That's what's a little bit more loosey. This is a prototype. We say that this function exists. And if we don't match these to the implementation, then we're like, oh yeah, everyone's calling this. And then that's not what we wanted them to call. So you match this up with what the implementation was, and then you get all the call sites. We'll give you compile errors, like now. And it's saying, okay, what do you need? You need to have them both. And now we're back to link errors and constructor destructors, which we would optimally like to get rid of course. But we'll see how that plays out. So there is the sound setup. Okay, that's the immutable part of it. And of course, there is the mutable part as well. And that's what has the active. And so that doesn't need a destructor. And clear, we need that back. And I guess rules do apply. Clear only has one call site, gets inlined. So this is pretty typical. You keep in the comments, you keep the call, and you keep the header, and then you fix it. So what's getting passed is this. Yeah, so we're looping over all the sounds, and we're deleting their variations, which are in an array. I guess you could you do sound equals? No, it doesn't like that. Okay. So that seems done, right? And now the immutable type, I'm gonna assume we need two of these. This is the immutable one. And this is the mutable one. He's going to move later, probably. So yeah, return variation, play variations. Yeah, like that. And we'll see if that works. Let's say variations work. Performance is atrocious because I'm building too much dynamic mesh. But I would say that refactoring was a success. Let's do an example of compacting state. So assets, for example. No, not assets. Sounds. It has a bunch of crap here. Immutable sounds and immutable sound types. So this stuff is supposed to be in assets, right? And that means we have to forward now in this header. And it doesn't know what that is because now it's in assets. So yeah. By the way, what I did there, I have hotkeys bound. Control F7 is compile the current object, so C++ files. I think, what is it, Shift F7, just the current project, and then F7 the whole solution. So that's the hierarchy of work there. So what did we do? We just put that stuff in here, and I like not constructors. I liken to them. So what happens if we just remove this? And it has, what has it got? It's got pointers and num variations, right? That's interesting. And what is this doing? This is wiping. So I would say in this constructor, engine is getting wiped, sounds are getting wiped. So what about sounds equal, right? And it says you cannot assign that, so I'm going to say screw you, core wipe macro sounds. And it doesn't know it, so core macros. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're getting rid of this because it's just zeroing everything. We can just do with wipe. Cwipe, by the way, if you don't know, is memset of x, size of x, right? Right there. So we got rid of the constructor. Fun all day long. Assets were here. Yep. So now my constructor there. If we want to get rid of these, get rid of that one and see what it does. So it's just doing that. So we look for the VC assets T constructor. Can we find it? Can we find it? It's there. So we'll just do that and we'll go sounds. Why? It's soundness. Previous, okay, who cares? We know. It's previously the constructor. Right, and so we need that macro here. Good, get rid of that. How to get rid of the destructor, which will mean that this needs a destructor. Oh, this is bad. VC assets T there, and then we want the destructor here somewhere. And eventually get rid of all that shit too, because it would be nice to not have any at all. So that's there. Assets does that. That was the current. Choose the form of the constructor. Choose and perish. There it is. Like, why are you doing that? No destructor called. I'm gonna PQRS sound channel, I think. Nope. Sound. Yeah. So that was just super ugly. We didn't get anything, right? So what I'm gonna do, what I'm going to do now. Am I recording? Yes. Is I'm going to inline that shit. Sound engine, sounds. Let's do that. And that's interesting. Cool. Now we get into the nitty-gritty. So we're going to say those no longer exist. So what do you do then? You put the whole assets in there. And that was my point. To compact all of the immutable state into a single struct and not have structs in structs, because that is the the what's the word? Famous, I suppose, is the word. Anyway, the classic klasser som mappar, as we used to say back at Massive. And that's classes as folders, where you don't really need the encapsulating, in this case, you don't really need the encapsulating thing, like a struct around those two members. Like, what's the point? And you might argue, yeah, but now you have to prefix them both. Well, I don't need to, but conceptually, and that's what the line break is for. Conceptually, they belong together, I suppose you could say, and then you could argue it needs to be a struct. It should be a struct or it should be a class. But because we're doing procedural style, as you will see when you go through the compilation errors here, you'll see in a minute, you'll see that the access to them isn't via this. It's you have to go struct name dot, variable name dot, like in this case here. Oh, I need to wipe sound, the difference is only that. And they call it snd now. That's the only difference, right? Because you put the dot in between, right? Because let's go back. Let's put them side by side. It would be like this. Snd, this is the new, like, how is the struct helping us in that case? It's complecting. No, it's not complecting. It's complicating, but we don't need it because we have to access everything in this way anyway. There's no like, otherwise it would be like this if this thing still was a constructor, right? And this doesn't help us. So you might as well just do that. And you can keep the prefixes if you want to organize your brain. And here's another great example of it. It's actually just, it collapses down to this. And you're knitting, it's just simpler. It's simpla, ja. And there, look at that. I just got rid of a dereference. And you might think that this is horrible, this big glob of stuff. Now everything's this big, huge, that's Snd engine. But, if you're fine with things being publicly accessible, and remember, there's a difference between publicly accessible and globally accessible. That's not the same thing. But there's no real point in splitting these things up. It just makes everything more complicated. The main distinction I want is the things that are immutable post-load and the things that are mutable. So eventually, obviously, this stuff is all going to be compacted in the same way. I can probably do that in this video as well. Also, you notice that I'm compiling and fixing one error and then compiling again, even though you probably notice that, look, there you can fix them both before you compile again. That's just a habit because many times the following, like the first compilation error, you can fix it, but the following ones, there's a bunch of ones in between that are dependent on the first error. So it's like, if you embrace the fact that once you change one thing, you're changing your program, and the output of the compile will be different. It's like there's not. It's always speculative to fix more than one error, but in a lot of cases, obviously, that it's fine. So yeah, here is an example of, we're going to, let's call it assets, because that's one of the things that's also interesting. Is like, what should they be called now that I'm doing like the immutable mutable split on the model side, usually called immutable and mutable. But what are they called on the VC side? It's like, if you're going to be having a lot of functions that take both the model side pieces and the view side pieces. So what is it? Is it assets view? That it could be that assets view versus immutable mutable, but I don't know. Is it model immutable, model mutable, and then VC? I don't know. Who knows? Oh, look, I fixed 2 errors before compiling. And it's assets.snd engine. Assets.snd engine. So now there's dereferencing going on because like what struct do I pass in here? I could, I could have passed if once, before when I had this struct, I could have passed that, but I don't want that. In general, I don't want that. In general, I don't want it. So I'm just flattening things as much as I can. So yeah, now we're fixing the implementation of everything here. So it turns into assets citizens. And we can do a search here. VC assets T ref assets. Oh, I saved some typing there. And sounds, we'll do that one too. Replacing document, it's going to be called assets send sounds. Yay. Flawless victory. Okay, let's do the mutable part of the sounds there. I'm curious, by the way, this thing, does it exist anywhere else? And there are a couple places where we're passing one of those, so we still need a type. Otherwise, I would go and do this with a unnamed thingy, mabob. But then you get that problem, right? Yeah. So we're just gonna leave it alone. But the next thing was the mutable part of this. And yeah, let's move it, to begin with, let's move it to mutable. Because it needs sounds there. Yep, and this is going to be stages, but let's show the stages just to be clear. So those are declared now in mutable.h. So we're good. Nothing's really changed. We just moved them between headers. But now also this is starting to get interesting because now this is just a, you don't need these things because there are no structs here. So you just use the highlighting to see, okay, what do we actually need to forward declare here? Yeah, so those are all validated, right? And also interesting to see, ooh, look at that. That came from there. So we gotta look at, doesn't know what a sound T is. Hopefully it will get it. No? And that's where that one was needed. And now PQRS. Yeah. Yep, so we're good. Can we get rid of any includes? Yo, look at that. Look at that. Not that one. Not the file system. Not the stay. Can we get rid of the header? Look at that. That's super interesting because like previously, this would have been like the interface to a class, and this would have been the implementation of the class. But look at that. We don't even have to include the interface, so to speak, because it doesn't work that way. It's like these are just like these functions. It's telling the compiler that these functions exist, external linkage. They will be somewhere. And here's the where that they are. And you know, this isn't necessary anymore. Like you could put all your, potentially you could put all your forward declarations, all of this stuff in one header file, and you call it functions or function signatures. And then you can make one other one which included all of the implementations, or you could split them up. It doesn't matter anymore. And in many cases that happens, that forward declarations are in one header, and like everything gets spread out. Doesn't matter. And in certain cases as well, I just get rid of headers because there's only one place, there's only one call site, and you can just put that in that forward declaration in the CPP, which is calling, and then just keep the sounds in this case. So yeah, cleaning things up. But what we were doing was trying to melt this stuff down. Sorry, not there, in the mutable part. So here. Which order to do it? Probably get rid of that constructor. And oh, it's still there, and it's not supposed to be there, and it's supposed to be here, immutable, right? But it's not one, and then we have to find, no, sorry, what we need to find is this, which is probably still here. Yes, it is. And look at that, it's only doing that. And so conceptually, it's supposed to be here. And so it's relying on this constructor, right? So what you do is you get a loop going for we can do this. Send sounds and send, right? That's okay by me. We're just looping them all, and then we're saying, okay, that one doesn't exist anymore, and we're good. Let's be smart about this, or let's be cautious. Cycle. Okay, cool. Yeah, it works. So now we want to get rid of this constructor as well. And yeah, what's it doing? And happily we have this one here already. So we can go like sounds dot activate. Yeah. And that style, by the way, very epic. That's Canadian. Canadian code style. It should be is active is what people would use, but you should, activate that's Canadian code style, and that's humorous to me, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, cool enough. Done. What are we doing? I would say next step is to inline this stuff. And we'll do the same as we did in the assets. And that means that here, where these don't exist, or that type doesn't exist. So we have to, what are we going to use? We're going to use mutable. The entire mutable state is going to be passed. That's a new one I found. Control delete will delete a whole word, and sometimes I like that instead of Control Shift arrow to highlight and then paste. You can just do Control delete, like there. 2 control deletes saves just a bit of key presses. It saves a few key presses. Another trick is using map mode here. You right click, scroll bar options. You use map mode, go wide, because then you can see the red pricks, as they're called in Swedish, and that can give you a leg up on compilation errors. Again, violating the idea of just fixing the one, but sometimes some people, depends on how your brain is wired, you might like to do that, and because it is known, what the compiler is going to say, or you think you do. So that's, yeah. known. It's weird, I don't think map mode caught those other ones before. So yeah, no, just in there. So yeah, the prefixes on type names, like the VC underscore, that's very recent. I'm getting rid of namespaces. And that's a whole other video, I suppose, proving why namespaces are busted, because they can be defeated. That's the main thing. I mean, if namespaces, if you actually had to, or forced in all cases to type them out, I would respect them, because that would, you know, people might argue the opposite, that that you want to be able to do like using namespace and all stuff, but I don't agree. I think the prefix, I currently think that the prefix is better, but I may do a video on that with examples that prove it to you. It would be fun to do like a whole object-oriented to procedural refactoring. If I have any of those code bases remaining, I probably do. It would be really fun to do one, like a clean one. Or clean in the sense that it's also object-oriented, and then I'll just refactor it and do like a Brian Will style proof or pitch. Yeah, I'm not done yet. What did I do? I'm getting totally distracted by myself here. Yeah, so the container class, as it were, is now gone. And this one will probably need to remain, because passing by instance, yeah, in the implementation of the sound stuff. So that will have to stay. And then there's a lot of like use of non-32-bit. Yeah, how many variations are there? There's 4. You could use bits for that. If you want to be really sneaking, you could do like that version would be unsigned variation 4 bits, and unsigned have played 4 bits, which means this is what this is 4 bytes, and that's 5 bytes. That's bad, and this, all of this is 4 bytes, I think. Yeah. Anyway, this type would probably become a unsigned int 32. At a high level, this is, you know, this code base used to be object-oriented. It's slowly melting to become procedural. Continuing on with the theme of collapsing state. So here's the mutable part of the view controller, like visualization state that is required. And there's only one instance of this cycle, which is here. So what I would argue is just do this. And that's similar to like the singular hero. You just prefix, you know, just to keep it together, right? And again, structs as folders, avoiding that, no hierarchies, you know, if I can help it. There are cases where there are hierarchies. For example, like here are a couple of meshes, dynamic software meshes that get built for particles and what have you, anything that's dynamically allocated and then just rendered as a user primitive. The reason those exist as structs at all is that, first of all, there's more than one of them used here. There's 3, so that makes them reusable, and that's reason enough. But also, they're from another namespace. They're from soft mesh namespace, so those are used in many projects. So that's why they're like that. But in any case, there's a single instance of something, and it's from this project. Just preferred style is just inline it, and you'll see why. Right, so all these cycle methods here. So this used to be, you know, part of a class, right? But these are vestigial. You'll see here. Okay, this one does not, but this one, there's a cycle there, right? So that's not going to be. It's now that it's part of the mutable state. We do this, and then we'll see what all the call sites say. They go like that. Right. Whatever's wow, there's only one call site. Okay, we're gonna tackle that later. But now these are called cycle. Okay. What is that? That's just stupid. Looks like, I would say that that's probably an opportunity as well there, that there's only one hero in, okay, here's an interesting case. Okay, tangent, let's not look at that. So cycle dot here will all change to, let's take a chance here. Cycle dot will be cycle underscore, not whole world. Yeah. Cycle. So it's wiping this. Okay, and there's a case where you would have been nice to have a struct there, right? Because we are just wiping all the members. So that will require us to say equals 0. Could use struct, I suppose. Cycle trail equals, oh, is that possible? Let's use that notation just to be fun. Empty object. Will it let me do that? And why was it? That's interesting. Why does it let me do that? Because those are just, okay, probably because that doesn't have a constructor. No, that's why, because that's a pointer. That's, I don't understand why it won't let you take like an array of a primitive type and wipe it, but that's what memset is for, I suppose. Do I like that, or do I want to imply? Let's make it clear. So hopefully nothing was destroyed. Yeah, sort of designed it right. Some weird collision shit going on. Okay, sure. Yeah, not because of the refactoring. Yeah, there was only one call site to this cycle reset function. So we just get rid of it and see it's there. So this is the style. And look at that. It just goes straight in. And we can call that cycle reset, just to be clear. Yay. Similarly, only a single call site to cycle render, I believe, which the compiler will tell us. Look at that. And in this case, I think, how big is that? It's kind of, yeah, it does trail segments, and this is like one of those cases, I think, where I will violate my own rule and just do it here somewhere. Just because of it's messy, and it has a lot of inlining crap, you know. But anyway, oh wow. Anyway, it's supposed to be static, and we'll see. Where's it called? It's called there. So present entities, which was already a static. Yeah. But now all the other stuff from the implementation. We're going to be a little bit more prefixy here because this is like the whole, yeah, global render. So trail segment is trail offset. Yeah, I'm doing this a little bit backwards, but yeah. what happens with that? We got rid of 2 files. Make sure it's not in use by some compiler or automagic thingness meant. Yeah, and I'll bet you those 2 includes were not necessary anyway. This one might be fun because I might massively fail. We'll see how it goes. I'm thinking that there's only a single instance of the world, the X world, which is like the meshes, the walls and the floors and whatnot, which is built from parts it's built at level startup. Well, it's implicit anyway. It's wang tiles and all that crap. I think it is cached on disk, but the code is here for building it. In any case, there's only a single instance and in the mutable state, and that's interesting. Is that actually immutable post creation? It is. I would argue in that case, we'll do it this way first. Is the X world part of the mutable state? It's not. We're going to put the X world in. That's, yeah. This is conceptually ambiguous. It's not as immutable as the assets because the assets are loaded once on startup. Let's look at them. They're like sounds and animations, textures, environments, all the renderers, the HLS effects, meshes for things that are just on the GPU, the bot and the cycle, and the hero. That's a blend mesh, so it's animated. And then there's grid, which is some quads for the infinite grid. And then there are effects, which are basically particle generation programs. But anyway, that gets loaded at startup and it's immutable. It's like done. Aside from to the extent that this program is an editor for those things. But conceptually, we can say we can just leave that alone for now because we're thinking of the runtime case, the play case, what we're optimizing for. So in the case of the X world, it's mutable every level load. So that is a shorter lifetime than the entire assets because they're they're for the whole program execution. So you could go and say we're going to put them in assets. I'm going to do that because in Space Beast I also do stuff like that. Like there's some things that are per level. We'll do that, and we'll see how it goes. And then, that prompts me to say, just to temporarily, we're going to go immutable here. And the assets are immutable. Also, the constants are immutable, so that's a good folder to have anyway. I'm going to say that the X world is immutable. And what's it saying? It's saying it's not a member of mutable. Of course not. It's going to be assets X world. And now we're getting into like a slippery semantic slope because assets, it should be immutable or VC immutable. You could split it up even more and have like assets versus level, stuff like that, level immutable. It depends on how complex everything is, how many stages you have. If you have like a per level thing, if you had even more granularity, to it, like sections in levels and things like that, you might be tempted to have those, But what's interesting, ooh, that one's cool. Look at that. It's assuming that this is constant. Yeah. Or no, sorry, mutable. And that's in this function, that's actually true. This is not immutable anymore. And just to get ahead of that, let's change the there. So that's what I meant by when the play controller reset is called every level load. So that's when it needs to change that or mutate that. But that's clear enough. Again, slippery slope. You might not want these things to be, you know. It's really just, you know, C++ isms, because, you know, nothing is really truly immutable because you can just cast it. So I don't really mind doing that. It's more like about like state structuring. That's why we want the assets to be a separate thing. And here's another case. Look at that. The immutable world, which is like the immutable part of the simulation of the world, which changes every level load, has turned out to be just a reference. So it gets mutated on every level load. So like I'm pretty fine with that. Well, that's interesting. Did I totally mess up there? Okay, assets is, yeah. Anyway, I just moved it from one place to another. And this is things that are going to change some aspect of that thing. These are editors. Yeah. So they wouldn't be in a public deployment anyway. That would probably be fun to do also for this project, to split up. To actually do a public and an edit and a dev deployment split, which it doesn't have right now. It would be super interesting to see how small, how minimal the public deployment would be when everything is far more immutable. We were moving the X world. And now this is like the typical procedural bitch you get. It's saying like, oh man, you forward declare something, and what's it saying? Place settings. Yeah, I changed it in the implementation. And sometimes you can get ahead of that. You can like look here, and sometimes it underlines. Like, what did I change? Did I change something in? What did I change? Play settings. You can see it here. Play setting. No, play controller do input. That's another one that's hard to find because it's in the meta controller. Here. Come on, show it to me. No, wait, play settings. Play settings do input, there it is. It's hard to see. There, do input. Let's see, we can probably find it. Yeah, we changed it slightly. And it says, yep, which means this one changed, and we knew that already. So meta controller do input, do input. So this is what you tend to have to do. I should be getting green squigglies, but I'm not getting them. Play controller do input. Where? I want my squigglies. It's supposed to be squigglies. Where are the squigglies? If this isn't the same, this forward, I should be getting squigglies, and it's not. Maybe Visual Studio is not feeling it. Right. So what did I do? Nothing. I just moved it in, memory. Everything's the same. Cool. Yeah, that's step one. I have some time left. Okay, cool. Let's move this along. So it's moved to assets. I would say X world. There. So probably I want to move this stuff to assets. And it's going to say, yeah, where the hell is the X world? Like that. And a little bit of forward declaration, and this goes away. That's really good. Which means that in my mind, this stuff is now algorithms, all of this stuff. So this is just work. And it's saying, I don't know what that is. And that's because it's now in assets. And the destructor goes into assets. There. And it needs utilities for STD. And here it needs to assets. So that one's kind of interesting. That's all it's doing. And it's got a header, so let's leave it alone for now. So good enough. I'm thinking probably no more destructor, because that goes in assets, world.meshes. It's called xworld. And that's just that. And, seriously, are you kidding? Xworld meshes is just that. So yeah, so this does not no longer know, there's no structure as an S. And this is like a Richickiism, I think. It's like, why don't you just use a map? Because that's standard vector is a container. It's just templated, so it just looks ugly. But that's fine. Or maybe it's not fine. Well, yes, it is fine. It is fine. It's totally fine. It's just that you got to get used to it. There are my squigglies. Look at them. It's saying what? Function not found. So that's one hint you get, even though you're not getting it explicitly as an error, because as you would if it was, yeah, this is not a class member. I need to hurry this up because I have a meeting at 3 o'clock. Oh, that one's fun. So this is when it's actually building those meshes. Xworld meshes. The question is really how many meshes will you get? This is what you got to do. You got to go, when you get rid of something, you got to go like this. You got to go find all instances of the struct forward, because they will mess with you. Yeah. Guess what you want there is that. And that's an instance like maybe you would, that's just syntactic sugar, or not really, well, sort of, just to not have that super ugly template-ism there. But it's like, if you don't want structs as folders going on. Build world. World builder Mach power. Mutable build world. Needs to be not const. And I'm going to look at that because it's probably not going to do that if the caches are on the drive. All right. Let's be completely safe. Cache, remove sector A. And now it will build. It'll take a little while. I would say that's completely fine. There are a lot of first person mouse look. Yeah, there are a lot of cameras in here. Poorly designed triggers as well. I also noticed that the sky gradient is cheated in 2 dimensions. But both please. Oh, okay, tangent. So yeah, what did we achieve? X world, right? So just move that stuff into assets, right? And now we're down to just the world mesh. So that I think is an improvement. What's in a hard mesh? It has resources, so you don't necessarily want to copy that. So that's why this is dynamically allocated. But good enough.
Perhaps a better sound. I'm using an SM58, closer to my face. Let's do some more refactoring, procrastifacting, as it were. We moved the X world into assets because we deemed it, or I deemed it, to be immutable. Well, that's interesting. More or less immutable. Yeah, yeah. Slippery slope, mushy. But yeah, I think I like it better. And conceptually then, a x-world vertex. Is that a constant then? I guess. Anyway, this stuff, the vertex declaration, should probably be, yeah, should be in the constants. And what is this? This is not something that is, it's project specific because it has, what does it have? Like a position and then a bunch of colors and then UV and a normal. So that's why we need a vertex element thingy to describe it to the hardware. And that mirrors, of course, this thing. So yeah, maybe it's a constant. And should that be called world vertex? Maybe it's an X vertex. I don't know. But anyway, what were we doing? We're moving this here. World vertex. Let's call it X vertex instead. X vertex. And it's gonna give me shit, and I would, God, what am I going to do? Where do I want that? It's like a, it's not a, let's just put it there. I think that will make things simpler. And that is now X vertex. Cool. Constructor. This is speculative, but I'm assuming that it will, when we're building a world, we're going to set up everything. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm starting to suspect that this is really, really bad. Because historically, this program has been bound in debug by dynamic mesh construction time, right? That really go through? Sometimes it doesn't. It's too smart with its incremental stuff. We should be getting construction of that thing. Let's see. Apparently not. Let's delete let's delete the cache for the next thingy. Yeah, and let's see if we get into that constructor. Go to the next sector, and yeah, and that's there. Prepare vertex. does what? Position normal, world UV. Okay, I'm very curious. I'm very curious about this stuff. So when it comes in here, prepare vertex. There's one vertex there. Yep. And what's it got? Everything is wiped. Colors get set to some huge value, which I would suspect is black with full alpha. So if there is no constructor, what will it do? Yep. So that's compiler generated. What's interesting to see is what it does about colors. On the surface, it looks the same. That could be, because now this should be garbage. Yes, it's garbage. Is it because build meshes, and it lights the world completely? And then it builds again. I would say that looks... probably safe. And what I'm not liking here is this to begin with. Let's call it indices. Mesh. Oh, okay. Mesh for material and vertex. It should be this style. And why do you say should it be? Because it should be pure. Sometimes I want two buffers. Pervert vertex results. So you might argue that this is like copying a bunch of crap. Let's just do that under the time. And let's kill the cache to begin with. That's an irritating artifact right there. Okay, and now we also want that to be pure. That is much more pure. And look at that. Only depend. No, it depends on the normal too. Okay. I like that better. Sorry for the delay here, but for the looping audio, but it's building the mesh from the wang tiles. Yeah. And what am I doing in general? I'm just trying to get rid of files. Yeah, it needs that operator. And let's put that in constants too. And that's for building an optimal mesh because it needs to compare. What's its standard set or something like that? I don't know. I don't remember. And set colors. I'm curious to where that happens. Well, what's to be done? I guess you could say inline it, vertex. How many is that? That's 6. So I think it's better to do if colors. Well, it doesn't matter because there's only one vertex. No, it's 6 ifs. Okay. Bring the colors. If there are no colors, we're going to that. As previous. It's okay. I see. So light depends on colors. Fair enough. And we must destroy the cache. Sorry, I'm not talking as much. Maybe I need food. Who knows? Well, cafe. Swedish gasoline. That looks right. Let's assume it's right. Okay, again, what am I doing? I'm getting rid of files. Yep. I realize by now I'm sort of in the dark when it comes to what I'm doing. But at some point, let's look at mutable again, if we can get some stuff out of there. There's something called an X-Light grid. And I'm suspecting that that is also something that gets built. What is that? Yeah, it's like, it's not really a probe grid, but it is a probe grid. It's an ambient cube grid. But let's look at it. So it is a sector size of cubes. So yeah, so in the floor plane, where the players or the moving entities can walk, it's ambient cubes. So there's like six color. Ooh, for every normal there is lighting information for all the color channels, and why on earth that is separate, I have no idea. But I think there was some idea that you could turn on and off channels. Yes, and that is interesting. Maybe, perhaps. In the case of the world, because the color is baked, I believe it's baked. Yes, it is baked. It's baked in interesting ways. It's baked for all the static lighting is obviously could be baked, and that could be baked into. That's baked in. Let's think about it. Let's look at it. Right. Here is a base color that's never changing. So stuff like the light from the pits and the ambient occlusion in that case. This is stuff that is miscellaneous, animation light, and such and such. The idea was probably that you could turn these things off, and this light would be baked just like this, but you want to turn it off separate from this. So that's why it's such. Let's look at the shader. That would be interesting. I don't even know what is the shader. Probably alt vertex. Right. So mobile static albedo, for example, vertex static. What does it do? Vertex colors are part of the mesh. That many colors, and then there are multipliers that come in globally for the shader program, so you can turn them on or off, right? Or like interpolate them even, right? So that's the thing. Then there's the beam, and that turns on or off separately. Orange glow. So the lighting, the effects of the thing is baked in, but they can be turned on and off in a channel. Per channel, and they can also be modulated per channel, right? So red, green, and blue, obviously that's when the switches change because things show up, and so the geometry for that stuff, the stuff that's casting the light, is dynamically generated in a very poor way that should probably be optimized. It should probably be instanced instead, which would be cool, because I don't think I've done that in DirectX 9. And those can be, in any permutation, 2 at a time. Yeah, so those are the channels. But what I'm thinking, you probably shouldn't fuck with this, but yeah, this is probably not baked down into a single color because for the same reasons. So for movable entities, you can use the same sort of idea of turning things on or off with the multipliers. Same shaders probably too. Now that helps us. Yeah. But I want to know what this constructor does. Let's do that first. It wipes it. And the X-Light grid is there, and the X-Light grid is where does it live? Probably just there. Okay. In the mutable. Yes. So first of all, we just want to wipe it, the whole thing. So mutable, it would be very cool to be able to just say xlight. There's some fantastic reason that works. Because it's a structure. Okay, cool. But now we see that the ambient cube, this is a three-dimensional thing. So there might be a reason to be doing it this way. But yeah, okay, we'll do it that way. What I want to do is get rid of this structure. This one can remain, I think, because we're passing cubes around like that. But this, I'm going to say that that's an array. And we're going to just imply that we know that that's sector size. We're just going to do that because that's the only use case. We'll see how that goes. And yep. So that's the grid. Maybe there should be some music when we are playing, no, when we are coding in silence. Next line, grid. That one always gets me. What's it saying? Struct VC xlight grid T. Yep. Go away. This is another thing I like about getting rid of namespaces. So you can just, like, this would have been in a model namespace, this would have been in the same namespace, but it's just fewer lines, everything's tighter. Yep. Okay, are there use cases when you, well, okay. We'll see. You can still pass a null pointer, of course. We'll see how this works. Yeah, because previously we were passing a pointer to the struct, so now we can just pass a pointer to the all the stuffses. And there it once, well, it doesn't matter, still pointer will work. Let's be a little bit proactive about this. I think maybe why I don't like this is because I don't like necessarily using the mouse so much. Because I have to move my hand. Doesn't like that because you cannot assign it, so it's a cwipe x light grid. So yeah, some of the forwards that we did, that we removed. So speculating, copy that. Ah, and got screwed. This is how the way it works. That's interesting. There's another instance of it, but we're just gonna do it like that. Can't do that. ZFighter.grid grid size of file.grid. Wait. ZP. Destination source size, okay, yeah. Ambient grid. This will surprise me if it works without errors, because I'm just hacking and slashing on something. Have some faith. That one goes away. It's a grid. How do I even know, right? I guess he's got such a dark texture. I believe he does. You fucked it up. Like this, when I screwed it up, it's like, do I even want to debug that, or do I just throw it away? I would generally just throw it away and do it again, and that might be contentious, but let's make sure that where I was works. And maybe that was aggressive. Does it get a little bit of an orange sheen? Maybe. It's so hard to say. But he's a little bit more visible there. And he's more bluish there. It's hard to say. Maybe it was broken before. Nope. These guys are totally linked. sorry, they're being lit. It was correct. So what was wrong with my refactoring? Fucking around with this is totally work, right? No structs in there. What did the constructor do? We just wiped them. Well, it's nerd. So what that one gets to do is just do that, but that's how can that change anything? That should still be correct. No, I think I know what it was. No, do I? Do I? Something the mem copy got it wrong. Who knows? So let's do this. See where you can. Xlight grid wipe. Xlight grid. Let's do that. And then there's another place. And what I'm doing there is I am making sure that I am initializing them, and then I'm going to change it into a function. Yeah, I'm learning OBS. So what was I doing? Right. Trying to not mess up this refactor. That's why it's called procrastifacting, because, you know, when you think about it from a product standpoint, you know, you're not changing anything external or externally visible, right? You're not changing the artifact. You're just changing the construct. And sure, it's an investment, you know, in the future and whatever of your software. But you know, your project manager wouldn't like it, so to speak. Yeah, but I was trying to get rid of some crap. Yeah, I don't like this struct, you know, because it's just an array. So I'm gonna go say that it's not there. And maybe I can get away with doing something like this. Grid, match case and word. Something like that. Somehow I haven't caught all of this stuff. Okay, so that in that case it's optional. Okay, fair enough. And now for some reason it just loses focus. What is wrong with you? Oh well. Maybe I fucked something up now. Grid. 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 This is when you go to error list instead, right? It needs to go. Come on. I probably forgot the array size or something. And that should be mem copy file.grid. Grid is the source. Size of file grid. Yeah. Yep, it's an array with a size that we just imply. Is it when I read it, maybe? I don't even know what's happening. I'm confused. How does that work? Does it like read shit in the constructor? Is it okay? It's cache. Grid. Mem copy. Grid is destination, source is file dot grid, and size of file dot grid. That makes sense because otherwise it's just copying a pointer, which makes no sense. I'd say it works. Yep. Let's get rid of this. I'm gonna see wipe the grid. Macros. Cool. I'm sure that now I'm getting nervous because I had a bad refactor. Which wasn't really bad. I'm gonna turn off the visit build visit. Let's look for that. Build visited. Yeah, that's the dude texture that's getting put down on the ground. What? Animation box barrier. Okay, so okay, that's constant. Right. So yeah, that's just a warning level 4 thing. Not using that argument when build visited isn't on, apparently. So yeah, I'll just reference it and that warning goes away. And I'm totally wrong. and it was this one. So just simpler to do that. What's also cool is there's a couple of other renderers. This is like a Tron look with no reflected light. That was a rule. And you should totally be like orange down there, but it's not. There's also a edge detection renderer, which is kind of cool. That's from the most old schooly of the old schooly has issues. Yeah, as you can see there, that I can resolve. Anywho, that worked. Memset to the rescue. Look at that. File local state. What kind of crap is that? Sure, an outside cube. Oh, I don't like that. Right, guard is what that is. Yeah, well, I guess that's fair. Because it wants to be... Yeah, that's fair enough. Leave that alone. Being cube gets used in a couple of places. But I would say that's pretty utilitarian. Let's put it in const. Let's just do that. And it started making me feel like there should be like structs and functions, like two files, and that's it, you know. I don't know. Can I get rid of that? Yes, can I get rid of this? Well, that's a thing. Strut! Come on, getting tired. What is it, 7 o'clock? Okay. Yeah, so that's now what we call work. Okay, next thing is there's something called, scratch that. I am going to say that the xlight grid is, in a similar way to the xworld, is immutable post-load. So we're just gonna put it somewhere reasonable in the assets. Yep, right there. And it's just in assets, right? Really what I should do with this project is like make a decision about what the lighting scheme is. Because if it's going to be Tron, which reasonably that's what it should be, then then one of the rules that I really liked about Tron, and that was constrained to the technology at the time, but it was, they made a rule that in the video game world, everything cast its own light. So everything was emissive. But also as a result, well, another part of it was there was no reflected light. So things did not cast light on each other. There was the glow as a post sort of effect, or as a main, stylized post effect, but that did not mean that anything cast light, which is, for me, the most unique part of the look of Tron, is that, it's cartoony, sort of. It's like CRT emissive, right? At least in terms of the pixels, because obviously a CRT does cast light in the real world, but in the computer world, that's the thing. So it should be a look like this, probably, with the glows as a stylized thing. But I like this too. It's clean. It's cleaner than this. This is a little bit dirty. I guess some of that dirt comes from the aliasing that gets blurred. But Tron 2.0 had a trick. They would just fade. They would do focus black, so you only get the glow close to you. But one of the really cool things about that look is that it's completely authored, right? It's like old school video games. Like what you draw is exactly what you get. And I'm really liking that look these days. Some of the older versions of ZFighter had that, and I think it's the one that stands up the best. And why I'm talking about that means that all of the pre-lighting crap, all of the stuff that's going on refactoring right now just goes away. So I think that's pretty important, to make that kind of decision as soon as possible, because this is one of those code bases that suffers under speculation. The next one is world parts, which is, I think it's actual OBJ meshes that get loaded in and are part of the world building process. And I'm feeling like that this is only really necessary, that's interesting, when you are actually building a map. That's not cached, right? So that means that you could have it loaded on demand and not keep it around. That's interesting to me. What does that do? Offsets are editable. Let's see if there's an editor for that shit. That's probably Super Legacy. Look at that. There is an editor for that stuff. Okay, but that doesn't edit the mesh. So I'm suspecting that there's an immutable part of that. And right, the number of offsets is fixed, so that has nothing to do with the mesh file. Oh, great. This is another one of those immutable splits. But again, no. That's what it's like, I think. Yeah, so the offsets are what we care about. And we need to edit part of immutable Let's do two things at the same time. World parts, go away. They are assets, so to speak. Used to build world. This is just crap that comes from removing them or moving them out of mutable. Assets in it. Is there a cleanup going on somewhere? When does this get done? Okay, so that's just immutable cleanup and assets cleanup. Yeah, not feeling talkative right now, but yeah, anyway. Assets in it. What I'm doing is I'm splitting up the world parts to the part that needs to be edited in this program. And that's just the offsets. Okay, constructor, assets T. C wipe. What's in there? Yeah, well, that one's going to get smashed. Anyway. This is going to be interesting to see. There's going to be another element that needs to be passed in here, which is the actual mesh file. This is like one of the things that I find, moving away from object orientation, you realize how completely twisted together all your concerns were. And, like things that, half of this object is immutable and a third of it, or 25% is like load time mutable, and some of it is, you know, changing all the time, and it just gets so horrible to deal with. So when you do this sort of split up of what do you need to keep in, you know, what needs to be state to begin with, because oh, this is terrible. I'll be like, where yeah, obj loader, come on, help me out. Apart, right? So yeah, legacy, what was that? Apart had a group local as a model. Okay, so that's going to be coming in here. Model. So yeah, so you have in this case both the model and the part, which is just an offset, is they're both immutable here in this, because this is the world building aspect of it. So what does that want a model to? Parts. Yeah. It's gonna want a loader. Well, that's gonna be fun. So I basically need to, because this matches, yeah, group for name. Oh God, that's gonna be terrible. Yeah, let's not do that. There's not going to be a loader. There's going to be an array of group local models. So I can do that externally here. Yep. Models. And then you can go models floor corner, like that. Look at that terrible parallel array bullshit. And that happens like a hell of a lot in Space Beast too, because of the mutable immutable split. And that could be argued as being really bad, you know. But I would rather do that than, you know, just mashing it together and thinking that, oh, I just have one array, you know, with structures in it, as opposed to having arrays of structures. And I almost fucked up there. So those should match. Yep. Oh, this kind of stuff is terrible. Models. You know, sometimes going kindergarten mode like this makes it feel a little bit easier to deal with this crap. But this switch that's going on with these specific cases, this is so typical Wang tiles. It's the one. It's like what I used to say, like 16 cases, 16 equals 256, all that kind of stuff. what is it, 2-edge wang tiles? Well, anyway, it's one of the wang tile cases of the many cases that I've been using forever, and it's inspired by Blizzard Entertainment's stuff. More on that some other time. But it's a recurring thing, you know, like how many times haven't I coded that specific? Can this be done with search and replace? Probably not in a nice way. We need some music, you know, so you have something to listen to when I'm just in this hell. That was better. Copy the 1. Paste it, change to models because they all need that. Shouldn't you be? Oh God. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, you should do that. Oh God. It should be like that. Add part. Honest parts. Part. Assert part less than. Yep. Yeah, so you're indexing in here. And then you go const model equals models part. And then VC world part t is part equals parts part plus part import import. What? What's your problem? Okay, pointer to pointer. That's interesting. Should I have done an index or an index, a reference? You know, I'm feeling pointers today. Part. So yeah, models, parts, index. Pointer to pointer. This is so horrible, this kind of crap. Somebody needs to teach me how to avoid it. But this is arguably more maintainable. You're just doing the switching downstream. Now one could argue especially in the unlit case, that this could be done runtime with instancing. And instancing in this code base is something that is potentially very interesting. It's not, I haven't had a real need for it up until now. I'm thinking that if I do a refactoring of blend mesh, so that a blend mesh is just a single vertex buffer, with all the animations in a single one. I don't know, is it? I don't think it is. Anyway, that would enable animation blending, of course, because then there are no animations. They're just a bunch of frames, and the animations are something that you impose externally. So you could go from any frame to any frame, which will solve the flapping arms of the scientists in Space Beast, Terror Fright, which would be good. But in that case, I think you can write a shader so that you can instance all of the Space Beasts and draw them in one single draw call. Same thing with the scientists, and maybe not the players in this case because they have different textures, but that could be arranged, as they say. That could be arranged, Walter. What movie? Yeah. Computer requests are what user requests are what computers are for. Yep. This is where we want to loading parts. This is where we want to do this. Loader on the stack. These go in the builder. And that's the scale. Apparently, what the happened? Okay. Return. That needs to be looked at to catch that. It's pretty complicated. I'm being confused right now. World parts init. Okay, yeah. So that's the that's pretty stupid, the way that that's set up. Doesn't need scale. Like that. Worry about that later. Part names. I'm gonna say keep them on a stack. Loader. Loader. It's pretty aggressive refactoring. Yeah. Build meshes, sector, environment, flags, models. That's wrong. It's not a point, it's just a pointer. Models plus in part. See where that goes. This goes away completely. Did I remove? I did. Builder, where's the builder? Builder, it's there. World part name apparently assets. Yeah, looks like reasonable values. Next thing, see if we can get rid of the cache and get it to hit. About that. So what did we achieve? We got the mutable. What did we find? Yeah. Let's be a little bit sure about this. Sorry about that. It works.